You know, for a while now, people have been calling the Middle East a powder keg. Well, it looks like the fuse has just been lit. We've seen a rapid-fire series of direct military strikes and then counterstrikes that have really pushed the entire region right to the very edge. So the big question is, how did we get here? Let's break down the chain of events that has everyone, and I mean everyone, holding their breath.
And look, this isn't just some hypothetical question anymore. We are literally watching a situation of incredible volatility unfold in real time. We've got major world powers and their allies in a direct military confrontation like we haven't seen before. The stakes, to put it simply, could not be any higher.
All right, so to really understand how we got to this point, we have to go back to the one single event that lit this firestorm. The initial military attack that crossed a line so many people thought was completely untouchable.
And this was the flashpoint, a coordinated military attack launched by both the United States and Israel, aimed directly at Iran. Now, let's be super clear here. This wasn't some proxy fight with allied militias. This was a direct strike on sovereign Iranian territory. That's a huge escalation and a major turning point after decades of what you could call a shadow war.
This slide, wow. It really shows you just how ambitious that first strike was. According to Israeli sources, the targets weren't just, some military bases or infrastructure. No, they were aiming right for the very heart of the Iranian regime. Think about this. The supreme leader, the president, and the head of the armed forces. That sends a message that is so much bigger than just a military warning. This is what you'd call a decapitation strategy.
And that brings us to this word we're hearing constantly, escalation. It's exactly what's happening. One side acts, provoking an even stronger reaction from the other. And you have to believe this is probably just the beginning. We're already hearing from sources who've told CNN that the U.S. is planning for this to be a multi-day campaign of attacks.
But the military strikes, that's only half the story. There's also a really powerful political message coming out of Washington. And it helps clarify what the ultimate goal of this whole operation might actually be. President Donald Trump himself used these exact words to describe the U.S. military campaign: massive and ongoing. That kind of language leaves absolutely no doubt about the scale and seriousness of the American commitment. It also serves as a warning that American lives could be lost in all this. But the most direct statement, the one that really got everyone's attention, came in an address aimed right at the Iranian people. President Trump used this exact phrase: take over your government. I mean, that's an unmistakable call for regime change. It shifts the goal from just a targeted military strike to a fundamental political overhaul of Iran itself. So, a move that big was never going to go unanswered, right? The response from Iran came fast, it came hard, and from all the initial reports, it was on a scale we've just never seen before. Yeah, Iran didn't just fire off a symbolic missile or two. It unleashed what sources are calling an unprecedented wave of strikes. And this wasn't just a localized response either. The targets were both U.S. and Israeli assets scattered all across the Middle East. We're talking everything from military bases to other strategic sites. Okay, so this slide really puts the scope of that response into perspective. And it is staggering. We're talking about reported explosions in the UAE, in Qatar, and in Dubai. But here's the real kicker. Video has surfaced that seems to show a missile hitting a U.S. Navy base in Bahrain. And that's not just any base. That's the headquarters for the entire U.S. Fifth Fleet. What this shows is that Iran clearly has the capability and the will to strike really high-value targets way outside its own borders. So with the whole region now basically an active war zone, the rest of the world has been forced to react. But as we're about to see, the global response is all over the place, revealing some deep divisions and a whole lot of anxiety about where this is all going. Just listen to this powerful statement from the United Arab Emirates. They're calling this a historic moment, but not in a good way. They're framing it as a moment of failure, a failure by world leaders to keep the region stable. That's a pretty sharp criticism, especially coming from a key player in the region. And it just shows you how deep the fear is that this could spiral completely out of control. And this right here perfectly shows the split in how the world is reacting. On one hand, you've got the traditional U.S. allies who are all expressing deep concern about the violence in general. But on the other hand, you have some key Arab nations who are pointing the finger directly at Iran, saying its retaliation is what's truly destabilizing things. It's a completely fractured response, which makes finding any path to de-escalation really, really complicated. And that brings us right back to our first question. But now it feels way more urgent, doesn't it? We've seen the strike, we've seen the call for regime change, and we've seen the massive retaliation. Every single step has raised the stakes, locking everyone into this dangerous cycle. The question now isn't just whether this escalation can be stopped.
It's what on earth happens if it can't.